Warning. What you're about to hear isn't easy. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So imagine this, a courtroom so quiet, you could literally hear someone breathe. Then suddenly, a voice breaks the silence. It's calm, but heavy. A woman begins telling her story, and what she says next leaves the whole room stunned. That woman is Cassie Ventura, and what she shared, it wasn't just shocking, it was deeply disturbing. She spoke about what went on in a private room, a room known only to a few, a room controlled by one of the most powerful names in music, Diddy Combs. But this wasn't just a story about weird celebrity behavior. This was something darker. The way Cassie described it, it felt more like a twisted routine, like something planned, like something rehearsed. Reporters who've seen and heard everything were left shaken. She spoke of baby oil, strange rituals, things done to her without her full consent, even during moments most people would consider off-limits. And as she told it all, Diddy sat just feet away, shaking. And then he snapped. He screamed in open court. This moment, it could change everything. Cassie wasn't just another witness. She was the one who started it all, the first to speak up, the first to push back. And now she stood there again, 8 months pregnant, dressed modestly, eyes forward. She looked like someone who had been through a war and survived. At first, the prosecutors asked simple questions. How did you meet him? How did the relationship start? But soon, things turned dark, fast. Cassie described something called a freak-off. But this wasn't some spontaneous wild night. This was choreographed like a movie. Lights dimmed just right. Music picked out in advance. Oils and towels placed perfectly. He always had to be in charge, Cassie said. Even in the worst moments, it felt like he was directing a scene. She described how Diddy would bring in other men, not for himself, but to be with her while he watched. She said it wasn't always something she agreed to, and the way it was all organized, it made it even more disturbing. She broke it down into steps. Step 1, she had to describe everything, out loud, as it was happening, like she was reading a script. He'd make me say what I saw, what I felt, what I thought, in real time, she told the court. The room was dead silent. Someone in the jury wiped away a tear. Even the judge had to remind people, no phones allowed. Cassie paused, took a breath, then kept going. She said she was usually under the influence by alcohol, pills, or weed. Things Diddy allegedly gave her. They dulled her body, but not her memory. I knew it was wrong, she said, but I didn't know how to say no. He controlled everything in my life. And when she did say no, he called me boring, she said. He told me, if you won't do it, someone else will. That line hung in the air like a punch. Even Diddy's family, sitting nearby, looked stunned. It was the first time they were hearing this side of the story, and they weren't ready for what came next. When Cassie was asked to explain the second step, what she called the touching phase, you could see her tense up. She clenched her hands, took another breath. Then she revealed something that would make headlines around the world. The prosecution didn't just rely on Cassie's words, they had physical evidence to back it up. During a federal raid on Diddy's home, agents discovered something unusual, more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and similar products. One prosecutor described it like this. It looked like enough to stock an entire pharmacy aisle. In court, Cassie explained why that detail mattered so much. She said that during what she described as carefully staged encounters, Diddy would pause the session every few minutes to reapply the oil, not just on her, but also on the other man present. He wanted us to look shiny, like we were wrapped in plastic, she said. If our skin looked even a little dry, he would raise his voice. A few people in the courtroom let out nervous laughter at the odd visual, but that changed the moment Cassie explained what it all meant. It wasn't just for looks, she said. It was meant to take away who we were, to make us feel more like props than people. Her voice wavered slightly, but she didn't stop. She described how the oil made the bed too slippery to move comfortably. She said she would often lose her balance and fall. Sometimes Diddy would laugh. Other times, he would get angry and scold her for ruining the moment. It wasn't about love or intimacy, she said. It was about power and control. He wanted to be in charge of everything, like a movie director. If anything didn't go exactly the way he imagined, she said he would stop everything and make them start over. Then, Cassie dropped another detail that made the entire courtroom freeze. She said she often noticed small blinking red lights around the room, signs that cameras might have been hidden. "I don't know where the videos went," she said, "but I do know he kept everything." Prosecutors haven't officially confirmed whether any footage has been recovered, but they gave subtle nods that suggested investigations are ongoing. What came next made her story even more chilling. Cassie testified that members of Diddy's staff were sometimes involved, not directly, but as quiet enablers. She said that during these private moments, assistants would walk into the room to deliver towels, more oil, or even camera gear. No one ever asked questions, she said. They just acted like it was normal. Diddy looked down, his hands trembling. Even the judge looked deeply unsettled. But Cassie wasn't done yet. She leaned into the microphone, took a breath, and said softly, "This next part is the hardest for me." She described what she called Step 3, a phase she referred to as servitude. She admitted that during those moments she would try to get through it as quickly as possible, not because she didn't care, but because she just wanted it to end. "I wasn't there because I wanted to be," she said. "I was there because I felt like I didn't have a choice. I thought that if I said no, he'd replace me." Cassie then explained how Diddy would sit off to the side, directing the interaction like a scene from a film. He'd tell me how to act, what to say, how to look, like we were performing a role he had already written. Step 4, she said, didn't always include him directly. Sometimes he would watch in silence. Other times he would participate, but only if he trusted the other person involved. If he felt comfortable, he'd step in, Cassie said. If not, he would just observe as if he was controlling the whole room. But the most disturbing part, according to Cassie, came after everything else. She said that Diddy would make specific demands, ones that made her feel deeply uncomfortable and powerless. These requests, she explained through tears, weren't about closeness. They were about dominance. He said it made him feel powerful, she told the court. That moment broke the courtroom's silence. A reporter gasped. One juror looked unwell. The judge paused the proceedings and called a 5-minute break. Meanwhile, Diddy sat frozen, his eyes blank, his leg bouncing so quickly it blurred. When the court reconvened, Cassie returned to the stand, and what she revealed next took things even deeper. She said that there were times when she was forced to take part in these strange and uncomfortable sessions, even when she was unwell. According to her, she wasn't allowed to take breaks, even during very personal and difficult times. If things became messy or uncomfortable, staff would quietly bring in fresh linens, not to help her, but to keep things going. "I didn't feel like a person," she said softly. "I felt like an object, something he could use whenever he wanted." She also recalled a moment when she was too disoriented to move. And something happened that she never thought she'd have to describe out loud. She said she remembered lying on the floor while 2 men stood nearby. "I couldn't even speak," she said. "I was frozen." Cassie explained that Diddy would only stop these moments if he was no longer interested, not because he realized it had gone too far, but because he got bored. She admitted that fear and emotional dependency kept her trapped in this pattern. "He told me if I ever left, no one would believe me," she said, "and I believed him." The courtroom was completely silent. The only sound was the steady tapping of court reporters' keyboards as they documented every word. When the prosecution asked Cassie to describe how these dark room sessions would begin and unfold, her answer revealed just how planned it all was. "These weren't random," she said. "They were organized like a production." She described how the rooms were carefully arranged in advance. Lighting, music, even the way furniture was positioned. There were people on his team whose job it was to set the mood, she explained. She once walked into one of these rooms in Diddy's Miami mansion and saw a man adjusting a spotlight above a velvet couch. The man allegedly said he wants the shadows to fall just right. She said there were always cameras, some were easy to spot, others were hidden. "After a while, I stopped trying to count them," she said. "He made sure every angle was covered." Drugs were often involved too. Cassie told the court she was frequently handed unknown pills. "He told me they'd help me feel more," she said, "but I was never told what they were." The prosecution shared a text exchange between Cassie and one of Diddy's assistants. Cassie had asked what one of the pills was, and the assistant replied, "Don't worry about it. Puff says take it." These substances left her feeling confused and disconnected, sometimes for hours. Even more unsettling, she said, were the props Diddy kept in a separate room. Some were simple, others complex, even requiring demonstrations. "There was one piece I didn't even understand," she said, "so he brought someone in to show me how to use it." She said the person was a man Diddy had paid, and that the session that followed felt more like a lesson than a private moment. But the most surreal experiences, according to Cassie, happened during what he allegedly called spiritual gatherings. On certain dates, like his birthday or during full moons, he would host elaborate events. He'd light incense, play tribal music, and chant words he claimed came from ancient traditions. "He said it was about power," Cassie told the court. "He said I was helping him connect to something bigger than himself." Whether it was a dark joke or something more serious, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. Then the case shifted from emotional control to physical violence. Cassie was asked whether these sessions ever turned physically aggressive. Her response was direct. "Yes, often." She said the violence wasn't random. It was calculated. If I broke character, if I hesitated or showed emotion, he would snap, she said. One night, she recalled refusing to take part in a session. "I wasn't feeling well," she said. "I said no." But instead of accepting her answer, she said, Diddy grabbed her arm, pulled her into the room, and slammed the door shut. "He yelled at me for ruining his night," she said. "Then he pushed me. I fell backward onto a metal frame. I still have the scar." Prosecutors showed the jury a photograph of that scar, which Cassie said was taken by a doctor years later. She said it wasn't the only time. On another occasion, she tried to leave during a session to get some air. "He blocked the door," she said. "Then he slapped me, not in anger, but like someone correcting a child." She spent the rest of that night crying in the bathroom while he continued without her. And staff? They were present during some of these moments too. Cassie described one assistant who handed her a glass of water afterward and whispered, "You're okay, you're doing great." "I think that was the worst part," Cassie said. "No one acted like anything was wrong." Then her legal team played a voicemail. It was from Diddy, left just hours after one of the incidents. In the recording, his voice was soft, emotional. "You know I love you," he said. "You make me do crazy things." Prosecutors argued this was part of a bigger pattern, emotional manipulation layered over physical abuse. "It was like he broke me down," Cassie said, "and then tried to build me back up again." And then she said something that quieted the entire room. "I didn't think of it as abuse at the time. I thought it was love." That sentence, simple but devastating, hung in the air. No one moved, no one spoke. And just when the courtroom thought it had heard everything, the prosecution introduced a new witness. A man referred to only as D.A. Described as well-built and sharply dressed in a grey suit, he stepped onto the stand wearing dark sunglasses. Calm, composed and ready to speak. What he said next added another level of complexity to an already difficult and disturbing case. The next witness to take the stand was a man identified only as D.A. He calmly confirmed that he had been part of several sessions involving both Cassie and Diddy, but then surprised the courtroom by saying Cassie was usually the one who reached out to him. "She'd booked me under a different name," he said. "Sometimes she'd say it was for her birthday. Other times she said it was just for fun." D.A. described Diddy as quiet during most of these encounters. "He usually just sat in the corner and observed," he added. Then came a moment that caught everyone off guard. When asked about a troubling incident involving Cassie, D.A. claimed, "She asked me to do that. It wasn't Diddy's idea." The prosecutors looked briefly unsettled, but quickly shifted gears. They began asking him about the overall mood of these sessions. D.A. admitted it was strange and very controlled. "There were rules," he said. "No talking unless spoken to. No one could touch him. Everything was always recorded." Although some of his statements seemed to challenge parts of Cassie's story, he also confirmed many key details. He remembered one night when Cassie walked out of a room with a bruised arm and tear-filled eyes. "She didn't say anything, but you could tell something wasn't right," he said. He also described witnessing a heated argument between Cassie and Diddy that ended with Diddy pushing her against a wall. "That wasn't part of any session," D.A. said. "That was just plain aggression." Later, during cross-examination, more was revealed. D.A. admitted he had been paid thousands of dollars in cash for his work. But he also said that after witnessing one particularly upsetting night, where Diddy threw a glass bottle across the room, he stopped answering Cassie's calls. "I didn't want to be involved anymore," he said. While D.A.'s testimony complicated parts of the case, it also strengthened the prosecution's core argument that Diddy had a pattern of controlling behavior, that everything was recorded, and that emotional and physical harm were part of the environment. One juror was seen quietly wiping away a tear as D.A. stepped down from the stand. Then, the trial took a dramatic turn. The prosecution played a surveillance video from 2016, footage taken at the Intercontinental Hotel. There was no narration, no music, just the raw security camera clip. Diddy, by contrast, looked restless, twitching, shifting, bouncing his leg. The prosecution paused the video multiple times, pointing out specific moments, the impact of her fall, his blank expression, the space between them, all to make one thing clear. This wasn't a back-and-forth conflict. It was an attack. Then, a new witness was called, Israel Flores, the security guard who had responded that night. Now, an officer with the LAPD, Flores told the court he remembered seeing Cassie looking dazed and upset. "She was crying," he said. "She kept saying, 'I just want to go.'" He added that he saw a visible bruise under her eye, though, curiously, this detail wasn't included in his original report from 2016. The defense seized on this later. Diddy's attorney argued that, while the footage looked bad, it didn't prove anything more than a single outburst. It doesn't show a criminal conspiracy, they said. But prosecutors pushed back hard. They laid out a timeline of incidents, showing how this video wasn't a one-time event. It was part of a larger pattern. They tied it directly to the dark room testimony, arguing that Diddy's anger always flared when he felt he was losing control. To prove their point, they called a digital forensics expert. This expert testified that Diddy had deleted multiple videos from his personal cloud storage just days after the hotel incident. Some of those deleted files were partially recovered, and while they weren't played in court, they were entered as evidence. Their titles: Session Room 3, Cassie Session 2. At this point, what began as a case based on personal testimony had become something bigger, backed by digital evidence. One by one, new witnesses came forward. Some were former assistants, others worked in security. One was even a former artist signed to Diddy's label. someone whose career vanished after, in her words, she disrespected Puff. Each person added another piece to the puzzle. One assistant testified that she had to reorder baby oil and lotion every week, sometimes in huge quantities. "I wasn't allowed to ask why," she said. "I was just told to keep things stocked." Another assistant described walking into a room after one of the sessions and finding Cassie sitting alone in the dark, quietly crying. "She looked empty," the assistant said. "She whispered to me, 'Please don't tell him I'm crying.'" But the most jaw-dropping moment came from a woman no one expected, Trisha Weller. She had never been part of any lawsuits, no headlines, no interviews, until now. Trisha testified that she attended a 2017 gathering at Diddy's home, thinking it was a small dinner for creative professionals. "I thought it was networking," she said, "but within 45 minutes I found myself in a room with 3 men I didn't know. One of them was filming." She tried to leave, but the door was locked, she said, her voice shaking. After the incident, Trisha claimed she was quietly paid $7,000 by a company later traced back to Diddy's events staff. She said she never told anyone, not until now. The courtroom froze. A juror gripped her notepad so hard the paper began to tear. And Diddy? He was no longer the confident public figure seen at parties in sunglasses and designer suits. He was now a man scribbling frantically on a yellow legal pad, sweat forming at his collar, his presence almost collapsed. Gone was the music mogul. In his place was someone visibly overwhelmed, shrinking under the weight of his own empire. Then came another witness, a former videographer who worked Diddy's events. He testified that over the years, Diddy had him destroy more than 300 hours of footage. "I was told to burn it," he said. He said, "It's not for the public, it's for God's eyes only." That phrase alone sent a chill through the courtroom. Some said it sounded almost spiritual or even ritualistic. And with each witness, the picture became clearer. This case wasn't just about one person. This was about a system. One Diddy allegedly built over decades, structured around power, secrecy, and control. As the trial entered its final week, the energy in the courtroom shifted. Diddy's legal team looked tired, their strategies scattered, and Diddy himself. He sat alone at the defense table, shoulders hunched, barely looking up except to whisper to his attorneys. A courtroom sketch artist captured a haunting image. Diddy, with both hands over his ears, mouth open, as prosecutors read Cassie's most painful allegations. It became the image that defined the trial. "He looked like a man watching his own empire collapse," one reporter wrote. And maybe he was. In a final move to regain control, Diddy's lawyers filed a motion to block certain testimony and keep some of the evidence from reaching the jury. But the judge didn't flinch. "These allegations are serious," the judge said. "The jury deserves the full picture." When the motion was denied, Diddy slumped forward, whispering to his lawyer, then placing his head in his hand. Then came the prosecution's closing argument, and it was razor sharp. "This is not about mistakes," the lead prosecutor said. "This is about planning, about building a life of luxury on the suffering of others." They showed a timeline linking each past allegation to payouts, cover-ups, or legal silencing, patterns that spanned years. Then they dropped a final bombshell, a financial ledger leaked by a whistleblower from inside Diddy's team, listing monthly payments labeled only as care, silence, loyalty. Some amounts were small, a few $1,000s. Others, over $80,000. When asked about it in court, Diddy stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor. Cassie's team ended their case with one last piece of audio, a voice memo from 2015. Diddy's voice echoed through the courtroom. "People think they can leave me. Nobody leaves me." No one in the room moved. No one breathed. The man who once said, "Can't stop, won't stop," had finally hit a wall. Outside the courtroom, the fallout had already begun. His name removed from his alma mater, His honorary doctorate revoked, his key to New York City returned, his brands and deals in jeopardy. And now? He was facing a possible lifetime sentence in federal prison. But this trial might only be the beginning. Over 100 alleged victims are reportedly lined up, ready to come forward, which means this could grow into a full RICO-level criminal case, implicating not just Diddy, but the people who stood by and let it happen. And now, with everything out in the open, one thing is clear: the truth